Will hold an emergency meeting this afternoon amidst a major escalation in tensions between Ukraine and Russia. This comes after Ukraine accused Russia of firing and seizing 3 of its ships in the Black Sea, close to Crimea, which was annexed by the Russians in 2014. The president of Ukraine has already held an emergency meeting of his own war cabinet, and later today the country's MPs will vote on a declaration of martial law. Well, with me is the Conservative MP Bob Seely. He represents the Isle of Wight and is a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Welcome to you, Mr. Seely. How serious do you think this incident is?
It's pretty serious. The Russians have a long-term campaign to try to control the Sea of Azov, to try to squeeze the Ukrainian economy, because a lot of Ukraine's exports go through the Sea of Azov. So they're squeezing them economically, and now they're trying to do that militarily as well. I'm pretty concerned about the FCO's position, which seems to be rather mealy-mouthed.
Why do you think the Russians are doing this?
To undermine Ukraine as a state, to put it bluntly, as part of their conventional and non-conventional war against that country. And
you say our response is mealy-mouthed. I mean, do you think that they're, pushing at boundaries because they don't think they're going to get hit back hard?
In part, you're absolutely right. At the moment, the FCO is describing this as a confrontation between Russia and Ukraine. I think that's very morally neutral. And if the FCO can give me an example where mollycoddling a dictatorship works, I would love to see it. I think we really need to call a spade, and we need to say this is wrong, and we need to call it out for what it is. I like Jeremy Hunt's tenure so far in the Foreign Office. He needs to actually start getting a grip of his ministers and civil servants and actually start being outspoken. You do not gain any brownie points by mollycoddling.
Why do you think we are being so cautious on this? I mean, after all, we are supporting sanctions against Russia.
I don't know. But this is not a confrontation between two states. This is an act of aggression by one state against another, and we should have the moral courage to say so.
Do we need to be thinking about stepping up sanctions?
Not necessarily, no. We need to take people with us, and I think we shouldn't be over hasty in our reactions, but actually identifying something for what it is an important first step.
Suggested to me that by a diplomat that one of the reasons why the Russians may be behaving in this way is that President Putin feels under pressure domestically.
Possibly, and there is a whole school of thought that Russia's war against the West, this political warfare against the West, is partly about state control. If you have a nation at war of whatever kind, verbal, conventional, non-conventional, it makes it easier to control your population. The other really critical dynamic that we need to understand is that the Russian state has significant problems in identifying or even accepting Ukraine as a state in its own right. And a lot of this is about a fundamental Kremlin contempt for Ukraine as a state.
But there is a reality, isn't there, whether you like it or not, that in terms of supporting Ukraine, Britain and indeed the rest of the European Union are prepared to go so far but no further. I mean,
absolutely.
We haven't extended the European Union or NATO, for example, to the Ukraine.
No, I think NATO is very unlikely to extend, but the European Union could in time. There are 3 East Slavic states, Russia, Belarus and Ukraine, and only one of them is a functioning, either semi-functioning democracy. So this is a really critical area for us, and Russia is still a potential threat to this country. So we do need to support Ukraine, not in some anti-Russian way, but to actually help it become a model of democratic development in that part of the world.
Also being suggested that perhaps not just the occupation of eastern Ukraine, backed up by Russian forces, but even the annexation of Crimea are things that are reversible.
I suspect that the annexation of Crimea isn't reversible. What happens to the Crimean economy in the long run, it means it may be in time that they will regret it. I suspect that isn't reversible, but what isn't also reversible is Ukraine's move to the West. And we need to encourage that, because that 50 million people who live in that state want that future as part of a wider world and not as part of a new Russian construct.
Busy day in Parliament. Would you like to see an urgent question or something, a statement from the Foreign Secretary?
Yes, I wouldn't mind actually, because I think we need to get to grips with this, and I want to see Jeremy Hunt talking about this because it's important, and he's doing a very good job so far. I'm supportive.
Where are you on the Brexit deal, by the way?
Currently, I'm voting with the government because I think the Prime Minister needs to get the deal before Parliament. I'm less concerned about the backstop. I hope I'm right to be less concerned than others.
Bob Seely, thank you very much indeed. You're watching All Out Politics. Coming up next.